As George said, my name is Scott. I am one of the pastors here. Welcome. Bienvenidos. Welcome. I think that's German. That's where I run out. If you are not a native English speaker, we do have live translation for you. That you can click on that with your phone, and you can actually hear real time or you can read using your earbuds, or you can read in your native language. There's like 60 some odd different languages there that you can look at. Just a little bit about me. I am one of those people. I have to make a confession. I'm one of those people that my wife sends me to the store, and I get everything except for what she asked for. Right? All the time. And in my defense, I do that for myself as well. I go to the store, and I come back, and I'm like, the one thing that I wanted to get, I forgot. Right? And for me, it's, I recently found out that I am a carrier of the double gene that increases your risks for Alzheimer's. Right? So I'm a little paranoid, and my wife's like, no, babe, you've been doing this since I met you. It's not, it's nothing new. It's nothing new, right? I will go, and my wife gets frustrated sometimes. She's like, you go to the store and you don't even think about me. And I'm like, no, I did. Look, I bought this thing, not what you asked for, but I bought it because of you. I was thinking about you. I just totally forgot what you asked me to get, right? There's times at the store I'm like, I know she asked me to get something. I need to call her. And so I call her. She doesn't answer. I'm like, hey, that's her fault. If I forget something, that's technically, that goes over well. Yes, you know. Right? And if you're anything like me, you can relate, maybe not necessarily about going to the store, but we all in life, we lose focus sometimes, right? We forget what the point is, right? If you've got kids, how many of you guys got little kids? Right? When you have little kids, it's like your focus is on keeping them alive, and you basically, everything else is just kind of a blur. And you're not sure what, you're even doing. There's things falling through the cracks. You're not even sure what you're missing, right? And you've lost focus. Or work. Sometimes we're on projects that are all-consuming, right? Or relationships that are all-consuming. And you get to a point eventually, after all this time, you're like, I think I've lost the plot. I think I've lost my focus, that this one thing here has been so consuming, I've forgotten what's really important in life. And it's easy for us to lose sight of the forest for the trees. Anybody relate? Like one time you lost focus? Like for me, I lose focus mostly. I'm just going to check a few messages. And then it's been an hour and I'm still sitting on the toilet. I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I? Men, you know, guys, you get up and your feet are numb. You're like, oh, but it's easy. It's easy. And the wives are like, what are you doing in there? I know you're done. It's real. The struggle's real. Even before the internet, the struggle was real. But today, we are going to be unpacking a parable that Jesus taught us that pinpoints this shift in our focus, this experience that we all have of losing sight of what's really important. We've been going over we've been going over, if you're new here, we're going through the book of Mark, and we're doing sub-series. Our current series, their sub-series, is the 7 marks of a truly great leader. We've been talking about Jesus' perspective on leadership, so we can apply some of the same principles to ourselves. And just to lay a groundwork, if I said the word leader and you checked out, you are a leader in some area of your life. You might not have the title, but we all have leadership responsibilities in different areas of our life. If you are a stay-at-home mom, you are a leader of your kids. If you have a bank account, you are the leader of your bank account, right? There are areas of our life that we all have leadership obligations to. So this isn't just like if you're like, well, I've got a boss, it's time for me to check out. No, you qualify as a leader. And there are things that we have to learn from God throughout all this. So, what we are going to be talking about today is mission clarity. Mission clarity. The mark of a truly successful leader is mission clarity. This one thing that we're going to be looking at today will determine whether you are wildly successful or an abject failure. Right? If you lose focus, right? You've had this happen. I've had this happen. I've lost focus with my being a leader over my bank account. You know where I'm going, right? And then all of a sudden I get charge declined, insufficient funds. Right? That when you lose focus, bad things can happen. Sometimes really, really bad things can happen in your life. So, the context, this parable that we're going to dive into happens on the heels of a couple things. First of all, Jesus cleanses the temple, right, which is kind of a very sterile way. He freaks out. Like, he freaks out. He makes a whip. He throws over money. He chases people out with the whip. He chases people. He is like raging out. Anytime you see them do that, you're like, oh my gosh. People walked away and they're like, what in the world is wrong with him? Right? But we're told that what he actually had was holy zeal. That he was so passionate for the things of God, it caused him to act in an extreme manner. And that's one of the things about leadership. We should have a holy zeal. The next thing, the next day, the leaders came out and were like, what's your problem? Right? They came out to confront Jesus. If you go into somebody's place of business and you start tipping things over and throwing things, the owner of that business has the right to come and be like, what is your deal? So they came, they're like, what is your issue? Who do you think you are? Who gave you the right or the authority to do this? And then Jesus asked them a question. He's like, I'm going to answer your question after you answer my question. And he asks them, where did John the Baptist get his authority, heaven or earth? And their response reveals something startling about the leaders of Israel. They refused to answer because they feared what the people would say. They viewed their authority as coming from man and not from God. Right? And that's what Jesus reveals. After that big reveal that you guys actually aren't in line with God's priorities, he tells this parable, right? And at the end, it says that they know exactly that he's talking smack to them in front of everybody. And they know it, and they're trying to kill him for it. So, here we go. Let's dive into it. Father, as we come before you and we open your word, we pray that you would just open our hearts wide to what you'd have to say and just speak to us, Father. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. He then began to speak to them in parables. He said, a man planted a vineyard, set a hedge around it, dug a place for the wine vat, built a tower, and he leased it to vine dressers and went into a far country. Sometimes the word vine dressers is a little weird. We don't use that anymore. It's basically tenants, right? He's renting out the vineyard for people that want to make wine. Now, at vintage time, he sent a servant to the vine dressers that he might receive some of the fruit of the vineyard from the vine dressers, and they took him and beat him and sent him away empty-handed, right? The vine dresser's just like, hey, rent's due. Imagine if you did that to your landlord. And they're like, hey, rent's due. And you're like, poof, there's your rent, sucker. And again, they sent to him another servant. And at him they threw stones, and they wounded him in the head, and sent him away shamefully treated. And again he sent another, and him they killed, and many others, beating some and killing some. And again he sent another to him, and him they killed, and many others, beating some, killing some. Therefore, still having one son, his beloved, he also sent him to them last, saying, they will respect my son. Realize, first of all, as we talk about this topic, how patient God is, because God's the vineyard owner. How extraordinarily patient, right? If I was a landlord and my tenant was like, I'm not paying you nothing, and like punched me, I'd be like, I'm calling the cops. You're out right now. But the landlord is patient, sending person after warning, after just repeating over and over, hey guys, hey guys, hey guys. And that's what God does to us this whole time. As we talk and unpack this teaching today, remember in the back of your head, God is extremely patient with us. So what did they do with his son? But the vine dressers said among themselves, this is the heir. Come, let us kill him, and the inheritance will be ours. So they took him and killed him and cast him out of the vineyard. Therefore, what will the owner of the vineyard do? He will come and he will destroy the vine dressers and give the vineyard to others. Have you not even read the scripture? The stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. This was the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes. So this is a parable, and the parable is a story that teaches truths about God and us and reality and all that wonderful stuff. So the vineyard owner is, of course, God. Good job playing along. What would the vineyard be? Not necessarily earth. It's technically Israel. It's God's work here on earth, specifically through the nation of Israel and later on the church. Everybody who becomes a child of God, that is his vineyard. In this specific incident, it's referring to Israel, but that's going to expand out to everybody. And look at everything that God has done. He's planted a vineyard, he built a wall, he dug a vat, he built a tower. He did all of the hard work. Right? These are all big, labor-intensive, doesn't happen in a day. It takes a lot of time, a lot of sweat equity to build a vineyard. He's not just planting, right? He's doing the rows, he has to till, thank you so much. Till the ground. He has to get the stones out. He has to create. There's a lot of work going on in here. A lot of planning, a lot of time, a lot of care. And what is the goal in all of God's work here? Fruit, right? The whole point of having a vineyard, or the whole point of having a garden. How many of you guys are gardeners? The three of you understand what I'm saying? My mom used to try at a garden. That's all I'm saying. Do you want some dead tomatoes? No, I'm good. What's the point of having a garden? Fruit, right? So God wants fruit. In this, what do grapes produce? Wine, right? The whole point is wine. And in this context, fruitfulness of God's people is not about productivity, and it's not about performance. It's about spiritual fruit, right? Spiritual fruit is his people living, marked by faithfulness, justice, righteousness, love, and honoring and worshiping and glorifying him. That's the fruit that he wants. He wants us to reflect him and glorify and honor him. But in this parable, the tragedy isn't that the vineyard doesn't produce fruit. What's the tragedy? The vineyard produces what it's supposed to produce, but the real tragedy is that the vine dressers keep it all for themselves. Right? They're producing praise and glory and honor, but that's not going to God, that's going to the vine dressers. And the issue isn't unproductivity, it is possession. The leaders took what rightfully belonged to God. And in the same way, we do the same thing as well. We build our own kingdom just like they were like, you know what? This is now my vineyard. And what they did is they lost their mission focus. Their mission focus was to tend the grapes, tend the field, produce some wine. They get a big portion of it, and the owner also gets a portion of it. It's not like the owner was like, you guys have to labor away for free, right? They got to enjoy some of the fruit, but they were never intended to enjoy all of it. And as we go through this, realize that it's not that God wants us to have joyless lives where we don't enjoy anything that he gave us, but if it ends there, then something is wrong. That the enjoyment is not just for us, but it should also be turned back to the Lord. Right? So what God did, in an illustration, it's like somebody built a salon, right? They laid down the foundation, they built the walls, they did the plumbing, they put electricity in, they did HVAC, they put a roof on it, all that stuff, right? They did all the hard work. And then all you have to do is just go in and run a salon on the inside. Right? It's not like running a salon is easy. It takes work. But in the ultimate scheme of things, how difficult is building a building from scratch as opposed to operating a salon? There's a lot more involved in the building than the running of the salon. And it's like think about it. Without God's effort, salon speaking, how difficult would it be to operate a salon without a building, without electricity, without chairs, just out in the woods someplace? Right? It's not just difficult, it's almost impossible. And God has set up this environment for these guys where you basically have to be negligent not to be able to be fruitful. You have to really screw up not to produce fruit. Like he set them up for success. But he hasn't just set them up for success, he's done the same for you. For each and every one of us. God has given us all many vineyards, relationships that we have. Right? He's provided you with resources. He's provided you with finances. He's given you all kinds of opportunities. He has given you things that will produce fruit in your life, that are designed to produce. He's surrounded you with people that you can influence, where you can reflect his character. These are many vineyards that God has entrusted to you. So what I want to do before we move on is just ask yourself, what are those things God has entrusted to me? What relationships has God given me? Right? If you're a parent, that's pretty easy. But what things has God placed under your care? Right? If you have a job, your bank account is one of them. Who are the people, the opportunities, the resources he's given to? And just like The vine dressers have been set up for fruitfulness. You and I have also been set up for fruitfulness in several areas of our life. The vine dressers. Let's talk about the vine dressers now. The vine dressers, they're renting of the vineyard, right? They're given a vineyard with the understanding that part of whatever they make goes back to the owner. The owner's not unreasonable. They get to enjoy the fruit. In the same way, God's entrusted us with stuff, and we get to enjoy it, but he has entrusted. He doesn't expect us to labor without joy. But this is what happens with the vine growers. I don't think it was like an instant, hey, this is now ours. Like, thanks. But over time, the vine growers are pouring all their effort, their energy. They're the ones out in the hot sun, baking in the hot sun. And they begin to believe that they deserve everything. Right? And there's this shift. The tenants went from renting out a vineyard to thinking that they deserve 100% of its produce. And they've lost the focus. Not only that, it's not just that they're like not giving what is due, but they're beating up the people that are sent to remind them of reality. The owner keeps like sending people to be like, hey, remember what we agreed to. And they beat them up and they kill them. And eventually, they become full-blown self-deceived. Finally, they get to the place where they're convinced that if they kill the heir, then the vineyard will be rightfully theirs. How in the world, you read this and you're like, how in the world can somebody be so stupid? That is the most absurd thing I've ever heard. Who is that dumb? And you know what the answer is? You and me. We look at these guys and we're like, these guys are so stupid. But if you look around the world, I know sometimes we don't like to look around our world, but if you look at other people, it's easier to see that there's a lot of people that are just self-deceived. And in terms of leadership, this is the number one thing that causes you to either succeed or fail. To stay on mission or to be self-deceived. The reason why we don't stay on mission is because we become deceived about things, usually our own importance. So look how subtle their shift begins. First it starts with, we did all this work mentality. They're the ones giving their life to produce the fruit. And so they begin to withhold it. And then they begin to tell themselves a story, just like you and I do. Like, we're the ones that do all the work. We're the ones that keep this place alive. The owner's not even here. He doesn't have to work as hard as we do every single day. He's vacationing someplace on a beach, sipping a pina colada while I'm working my hands to the nub. We deserve more. I deserve more. I'm the one doing all the work here. After all, he's not even working in the vineyard. And that grows into self-justification, where they begin to build explanations to make themselves right and the owner wrong. Because we have this habit, we never like to be bad people. I mean, there's a couple psychopaths out there who enjoy it. But the average person does not like to view themselves as bad. And so when we start doing things, we tell ourselves stories that makes the other people in the wrong and puts us in the right. This is why I deserve it. And that guy's a jerk anyway. And the messengers that the owner's sending, instead of being a reminder of reality, they feel like an intrusion into my story that I'm telling myself. And eventually, they go full-blown delusional. And the story in their heads gets to the point where they believe that if they kill the heir, they're going to be the rightful owners. And what started as a small entitlement becomes a full-blown takeover plan. And realize how detached from reality their plan actually is. If you kill the owner's son, the owner is still the owner. Right? It's like their plan doesn't even line up with real reality. But their logic has drifted so far that seems like wisdom. Right? And to us it seems absolutely absurd. How could anybody become so self-deceived that they would think that killing the son's owner the deed would just transfer to you? But we all do it. And it happens in the world around us all the time. It's always easier to see examples of other people than ourselves, so I'll start there. Right, there's something similar that's happening that I hear every once in a while, that's almost identical to the parable. There's this movement where workers feel like they are not getting paid enough, that we do all the work, we do all the labor. And I'm not saying that workers are not treated unfair. Some workers are treated unfair. But it's like this idea that we produce this product. We deserve a right to part of this company. Right? It's our blood, sweat, and tears that produce this product, which is true. But what they forget in that is that oftentimes those entrepreneurs spent years, went bankrupt several times, mortgaged their house, right? And they risked everything, and the workers really just have to show up and work. And it's this idea that, look, I'm the one that's working though. Right? And if you want to talk about workers that are mistreated, there are some workers here that are mistreated. But in China, the people that make your iPhone, most of it's slave labor. In fact, this is the crazy part. This came out in about 10 years ago. Some of the companies, the places where they produce the iPhones, they have to put suicide nets on the windows because the conditions are so bad that workers would rather kill themselves than keep working there. Right? And all of us are like, oh, that's so horrible. And then part of us is like, but I hope he finished my phone first. Right? None of us would say that out loud. And you're like, you hear about the slave laborers and you're like, man, that sucks. But the iPhone 17 is coming out and it's time to upgrade my phone. I hope somebody does something, but and that reveals our own self-deception about it. That people are literally suffering and we're like mildly concerned. As long as it doesn't interfere with my life. And just like the tenants, we've become self-deceived as well. We are all self-deceived. And as a result of being self-deceived, we lose mission focus all the time. One of the biggest areas that you can see your own self-deception is how much grace we give ourselves versus other people. Like when you do the same exact mistake, you're always like, oh, I didn't really mean to. My intentions were right. Like I really wanted to do the right thing. But this person here and this circumstance over there, there's all these reasons why this happened. But when somebody else does it, what do we say? They're a jerk. Something is wrong with that person. Right? And we give ourselves grace, but everybody else, we're like, ooh. And if you don't believe me, all you have to do is turn on the news. Doesn't matter which side of the news, in the CNN, Fox, any of them. It's without fail, anytime your own political party does something wrong, here's all the reasons why it's okay. And this is all the extenuating circumstances. But if the other side of the party does something wrong, it's because they are morally bankrupt. And we do the that's all I whenever I turn on the news, that's all I hear. Something's wrong with this, but do you really know that person well enough to be calling their character into question? And if you were there, you'd be like, oh, no, you don't understand. And we have this grace for ourselves that we don't give to hardly anybody else. Right? My wife, sometimes she does stuff that I do, and I'm like, that woman needs to be talked to. And then my child, he talks back now. He's like, well, you do the same thing, Dad. And I'm like, shh. We are not focusing on the fact I do the same thing. And it's actually pretty shocking how horrible humans can be to each other. Like, we live in a great society where our culture actually holds back the evilness within us. It's mostly our justice system and our robust policing. But other parts of the world, there's just so much craziness that we do to each other, right? There are people out there that are like, well, I won't go into that because I don't want you to get too sad. But my wife's friend, she's married, and every time her husband makes her mad, you know what she does with his toothbrush? Sticks it in the toilet, puts it back. Right? I'm like, did you tell the husband? He deserves to know so he can press charges. And we look at that and we're like, oh my gosh, but we do the same thing. When people cross us, we get vindictive and mean and nasty. And the crazy thing is the people that are doing the atrocities, like the guards at Auschwitz and the lady that is doing the toothbrush, they both tell each other themselves the same story. It's not really my fault. They deserved it. And it's crazy the capacity that we have, not just to hurt other people, but to convince ourselves that we are justified in hurting people. Right? Husbands and wives, you do that all the time. You're in an argument with your spouse or even sometimes with your kids, and you say something that is just nasty, cutting, biting, hurting. And the very first thing we tell ourselves is, you're like, I feel bad for saying it, but technically it's his fault. If she wasn't pushing my buttons, that wouldn't have come out. You feel me? And this is the hallmark of deception, which leads to the tenants making such imaginable choices. It's that same mentality that's in you and I, that we too can get to the point where we're like, you know what? Let's do some really bad stuff. I'm okay with doing bad stuff to people that are just going to hurt them because technically they deserve it. And I'm really the victim in all of this. So let's talk about self-deception, the anatomy of it. Why do we get so self-deceived? There's a couple reasons. And as I go through this, I want you to evaluate your own self and see if there's anything. Is it hot in here? Is it getting warm? Can someone turn on the AC? Muchas gracias. So evaluate yourself so you know like where your gardens are. Now it's time to evaluate if any of these self-deception tactics are happening in your life. So the first one is called the egocentric bias. I have to slow my roll. I have to slow it down. Egocentric bias, which is basically only seeing your own effort. It's really funny. They did research. I'm going to ask a question. There's no right or wrong. Husband and wives. How many of you think you do at least half, if not most, of the housework? Show of hands. Oh, we got somebody that's true. Oh, I love you. You guys are perfect. It's funny. There's a study that shows that both partners think they do most of the work, which is impossible. It's this idea that what we truly observe, is only our own effort. And so we see everything we've done. And things happen around the house, but it's you don't see the effort in it, so you think man, I'm doing all the work here. This person needs to start pulling their weight. And so as a result, it starts with this self-focus, justifying your own importance. We do this in relationships all the time. I've done this for you, 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 I've done this for you. And we're just focusing on what I have contributed to this job, to this relationship. Right? And we're focused on ourselves, and we begin to exaggerate our own contribution. We're I am pulling all the weight in this family. Right? For me as a husband, I'm in charge of the kitchen. That's my place, so I have to clean it. I cook. I do all that stuff. Right? And then when my wife asks me, could you do more? I'm dude, I'm already doing so much. Right? Or when the wife, sees, I've asked him not to put his clothes on I have to do everything for him. Everything? Do you really have to do everything? No. But our perspective is that all I see is my stuff that I'm doing, right? And then as we over-exaggerate our contribution, we typically underestimate the other people's contribution in the relationships. I carry my boss, right? If it wasn't for me, my boss, he would just be clueless and lost. I do everything. I should have a raise. And then the next thing is that we begin to also have performance being our identity. We like to tie our self-worth to how well we're doing. Look at me, I performed, I've done this well, I've done this well, I've done this well. And then so if your contribution isn't seen, isn't valued, then you begin to take that as a personal insult, because it's not just about the fact that you did something for someone. It's the fact that they didn't recognize all the hard work you put in. Right? I've done that. I've had relationships where girls hey, I made you this cake. And you're oh, thanks. And they're you don't understand. I put so much time and effort. And then you're oh, I thought this was a present for me. It seems like this is a present for you. You weren't doing this out of the kindness of your heart. You were doing this so that I would give you a certain reaction. And it's a similar thing that if we're doing stuff and people aren't giving us the reaction, we begin to get disgruntled with them. And we know we should care about others, but instead we go into defending ourselves instead of caring for the people around us. And we move from cooperation to competition with people. You have any relationships where it's moved into competition? And then the next one is the need to be right. Right, we have this idea that if I put forth the effort, I should be rewarded. And I should be rewarded as equally as anybody else. And so whenever we see other people getting more stuff, we say, that's not fair, that's not right. Right? That's what my kids do. That's all I hear from them. That's not fair, Dad. It's wired into us that if somebody else gets something, I should get it too. It is totally unfair. And we begin to create stories to make us right and others wrong in order to protect our sense of fairness. Right? And what happens to us, if that's you, is we get stuck in proving ourselves right instead of doing what is right. There's been several marriage conversations I've had with my wife where I'm stuck trying to prove that I'm right instead of doing what I know is right, which is what's loving. You ever been there? And together, these form the self-reinforcing system of deception that feels moral but is just spiritually devoid. It makes us feel like, no, I'm in the right. And this is how we end up defending behaviors that we would never condone in other people. And here's the thing, the vine dressers and with us, it didn't begin with hatred. It began with self-focus. It ended in hatred, but it began in simple self-focus, losing sight of what's really important. So let's take a look at ourselves in the parable. The parable is bigger. I've just been unpacking our interrelational problems, right? That when we get self-deceived, we bump into each other. Because that's the easiest one for us to see. But the reality is, the parable isn't excoriating the focus on hurting other people. The problem with the parable that the parable addresses is that the vine dressers were withholding from God. It's not that they were beating up people. Yeah, they were doing that. Their real issue is they were holding on to what was rightfully God's, thinking it was theirs. And it's that same attitude that also caused them to mistreat people. It's because they're biased on their own work, their own effort, and they became deceived into thinking that they were responsible for all the fruit and fruitfulness that God had given them. God had given them all this fruit, and they think, you know what? All of this fruit is because of me and my hard work. And they lost sight of everything that God had done to set them up. Why did God entrust his vineyard, which is his people, to these vine dressers? They were supposed to take care of God's kingdom here on earth, but what they did, instead of giving God the glory, the honor, and the praise, they received it for themselves. That the things that were supposed to go to God, they're like, no, I'll hold on to that. And not only that, they had great justifications to go along with it. And just like you and I, we have all kinds of justifications for the stuff we're doing too. God's entrusted us with all kinds of stuff. The average American, I know George doesn't like talking about money, but I'm going to go there. If I start talking about money, a lot of us will be like, start squirming. My money's kind of mine, Scott. Can you stop? Can you talk about something else? Talk about my kids. I'm fine. I know I yell at my kids too much. We'll talk about that. But don't talk about my paycheck. Don't talk about how I spend my money. Right? There's things in our lives that we're like, God, you have all of this. I'll give you everything except for this area. For a lot of us, it's money. But for some of us, it's relationships. That God's given you something, you're like, yeah, you can have that part. I'm going to take this part of my life. Right? What does it look like when we do the same thing? Well, with kids, when we make God's kingdom our kingdom, I see it all the time in kids. I had this horrible experience. I was in a church play, and I was so distracted. I'll be honest. We had these things are like tripods. They used to be like the round ones. Remember the round ones? And it was super shiny. And I was in a choir thing, and I was just staring at myself in the reflection, just like waving my thing back and forth like this. I had a line that I totally missed, and they're like, Scott. And I'm like, oh yeah, here's my line. I had fun. I got home and I got yelled at. You know why? Because I embarrassed my mom. Right? We do that with our kids all the time. They're a reflection of us. If they behave properly, that means something's wrong with me. Right? Instead of them being their own individuals and they make good choices and bad choices, and that's on them and they have to learn through it, we have this idea that my kid, their behavior, their performance, how well they're educated, how far. I do homeschooling, so it almost feels like mothers compete on how far ahead they are with each other. Oh yeah, well my kids are da-da-da. Oh, my kid's 12 and he's already graduated from college with 2 degrees. You almost get to the sense it's not really about the kid, it's about the parent. Right? And I see this all the time in baseball. My kids are baseball. And there's dads that will lose their minds because their 9-year-old kid blew a play in a tournament out in Bonsall for a trophy that's meaningless, right? Nobody will remember that game. But it's like, my child has to be perfect because it's a reflection of me. We do that to our kids all the time. That they are my kingdom instead of letting them be autonomous in themselves. Or in marriage, we do this all the time in marriage too. When we expect our spouse to meet our needs, not just needs, but needs that only God can fill. Right? For a lot of wives, this is mostly a woman thing. I'm going to pick on the guys in a second. Right? You look for your spouse to give you security and affirmation and a sense of self-worth. Those things should really be coming from God. Yes, he should be adding to them, but your sense of self-worth should be coming through you and God, not your husband. And when your husband stops giving you the affirmations and self-worth, we're like, this guy's got to go. Right? Where's his toothbrush? And what happens is we shift our hope to a person instead of God. That this person needs to meet my needs instead of God. And for most men, their self-centered version of marriage looks a little different. Instead of trying to draw emotional worth out of our spouses, we just want to be left alone. We just want comfort. Just leave us alone. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to have any hard conversations. I'm going to shut down when things get tense. Right? We convince ourselves that peace means silence. And so we stop engaging. Not because we're humble, not because we care, but it's there's just so much drama. I don't want to deal with the drama today. And that's just selfish. That's I'm putting me before my wife. My wife needs to talk, and I'm like, talking's hard. I don't like hard things. Or we do it about work, too. Sometimes we make work about us, and our sense of worth starts depending on how productive and successful we are. And we stop seeing our job as a way to serve God, but as a way to validate our own sense of worth and need. Or we get so consumed with work that we stop focusing on the things that matter. Guys, I'm mostly talking to you, your family and your kids. And you're like, no, it's more important that I'm successful here. And in all of that, we keep running our own vineyards like it's ours. Our relationships, our marriages, our kids, our jobs, our bank accounts, this is actually mine. We are just renters. In all of those things God has given us, we are just the renters. And a portion is due to God in every single relationship, in every single resource, in every single financial thing. A portion is due to God. So mission clarity. We're going to go through some application, then we're going to be done. So, Earlier, we identified your vineyards, yeah? Everybody at least picked one thing? One or two? You have something? This is what yes looks like. All right, perfect. Thank you, Sandra. Now, here's the question that we're going to ask ourselves. What are we doing with those things? What are we actually doing with those things? Who is the vineyard really for? Ask yourself, have I started to believe that this vineyard, that this thing God gave me, is actually mine? And it's all mine? Right? Or is it there for me to glorify God? Or another way to ask it is, what areas of my life have I stopped seeing God as the true owner of this thing? I do this all the time. I cannot wait for my kids to move out of my house because I can't have anything nice. The other day, I was looking for like a bug bite thing. Gone. Nothing's ever in, none of my stuff is where it ever needs to be. I put my stuff in a certain place, I come, and it's gone, or it's like half of it's missing. And I keep going, like with my kids, I'm like, hey, you guys can have this one. I just bought this. This is no touch. And then guess what happens? Touchy, 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 touchy. Break it, kick it. Right? And what does that reveal about myself? Well, number one, I like to be able to find the stuff I'm looking for. But I don't view that as the family's. That's mine. And my stuff is my stuff, and you keep your hands off of my stuff. Right? That's what it reveals. That I don't actually view myself as a steward of much of what I own. Right? There's stuff that I'm like, I'm willing for the kids to break. I'm a good steward with that. And then there's my stuff. So what do you have that you're like, I'm not comfortable with sharing that, God? Right? And for us in America, it's actually really hard to do this. Because we live in like the freest country in the world. There's other countries that are westernized, and they look at us and they think we're insane because of the freedoms that we have. They're like, those people are crazy. And that beautiful freedoms that we have is also one of the greatest liabilities we have. Because we think, we have this perception, we probably won't say it out loud, but we think one of God's biggest jobs is to ensure and protect my personal freedoms. Like, God's not doing something if my freedoms aren't like being fully, like I should be able to do whatever I want. And the reality is, we are like the vine dresser. God owes us nothing. We are the ones that owe him. Be thankful we live in America. Be thankful you could live in places where you're fully oppressed. There are horrible places to live. We live in like such a glorious place. But realize that all that freedom that we can do anything we want is also one of the biggest hindrances to us realizing that I owe God. God does not owe me. That God deserves all of my honor, praise. And I thankfully enjoy all the freedoms. But it's God who owns it all. So, second question. Out of your stuff that you have, God's design, I already said this, but God's design is that we don't get anything. That we get to enjoy all the fun stuff. But he's due rent. And so, where in your life have you enjoyed these blessings and freedoms and haven't been thanking and glorifying God for them? You've just been taking them for granted. Where in your life have you been like, it's easy. Life goes so fast, especially if you have kids. It's just a blur. And then I'm told once they're old, then you start missing them. But I'm going to be happy because I'm going to know where my stuff is. And then the last one. Where is self-deception showing up in your life? We all have it. We're all guilty of it, right? And it's not that you'll rid yourself of it. You won't. But it's about identifying it. You're like, okay, I'm starting to get self-focused, self-deceived here. Right? One of the greatest cures for a struggling marriage is get yourself out of your own self-deception. One of the greatest cures for parenting children, get out of your own self-deception. Right? More enjoyment at a job that's killing you. There's jobs that suck your will to live. I've been there. But one of the ways to endure getting your will sucked out of you is get out of your own self-deception. Right? It's amazing how extraordinary life can be when we avoid our self-deception and we are right with God. And we're like, God, this job sucks, but thank you for the money it provides. I used to be in sales, and I was pretty good at it, but I hated at the first of every month because your numbers go back to zero. And you're just like, oh, I hate that feeling, right? But it was good money. And so through it, I'm just like, God, I hate this job, but thanks for paying my bills. So here's the closing thought. Before we do that, how is self-deception showing up in your marriage? How is it showing up in your parenting? How is it showing up at work? The tenant's tragedy wasn't violence, it was a lack of mission focus. We can stay focused on giving God glory and honor if we stop being so self-focused and self-deceived. So if you want to be an extraordinary mom, if you want to be an extraordinary husband, if you want to be an extraordinary employee, the whole point is stay focused on the mission. And you can only do that by keeping your eyes off yourself and your eyes on Jesus. So what's the one area that you're going to make that shift today or this week? Father, thank you so much for everything you've given us. You're so extraordinary and so gracious and so kind. We repent for all the ways that our eyes have been on ourselves and our needs, and we've justified our own importance and not realized that we owe you so much. And just our ability to say thank you is a gift from you. I pray you'd cause that to resonate deep in our hearts this week and for the rest of our lives. In Jesus' holy and precious name, amen. Oh, and bless the food. If you're new here, we have food.